Hi, everyone. This is Chris Raycamp at the UMKC Innovation Center's Technology Venture Studio. I'm joined today by Tom Mardikes. Tom Mardikes is an American sound designer and theater educator. He currently serves as the professor and head of graduate sound design at UMKC Theater. Tom, thanks for joining me today.
Hey, it's great to be here, Chris. Thanks.
I'm excited because you and I have met and I've sat where you are sitting today, and I've experienced the sound mandala. And so I have, the experience of having my hair stand up, and I know how cool this technology is. And so for me, it's a great opportunity to, have other people hear about it. So why don't you give folks a little bit of a taste of what is this technology?
I'm pretty proud of your visit because I think we got a little tiny tear when you heard that Celtic piece.
Absolutely.
a little tiny. It was pretty cool. It was awesome. Yeah. And so this is something that, I've worked in professional theater since 1981, a lot with the repertory theater here in Kansas City, Missouri rep, now Kansas City rep. And, but then I've worked, from theaters in New York and Cleveland and Dallas and St. Louis and California. It's like about 250 professional productions, a lot of stuff that's like Shakespeare, and but it's creating sound and music, and supporting actor voices and stuff. And that's what I have an MFA program for. I've had an undying curiosity and passion for multi-channel and what you would call like immersive sound. And so what I'm most interested in is sound that, an audience member, is sitting and they're hearing things that kind of sound like real life, as opposed to what we have now, which are kind of like, some of these, like the things in movie theaters, greatly improved. But we're talking about, instead of like 10 or 15 speakers throughout the place, I'm talking about close to 200, and things that are underneath you and overhead, and then those are working together and along the walls that, and literally creating patterns. And so I'm in a little tiny, it's just kind of a little room. You can kind of see behind me here. This is a room with like 37 loudspeakers. I can only do part of what it is we want to do here. I don't have the up and down, but the bigger thing that I don't have is I don't have the front wall where I can actually do patterns. So there's essentially two things that we're doing with the sound mandala. One is something that isn't particularly unique, but we're doing it on steroids, and that is a distributed sound where, most people listen to music, they listen to things that are left and right, 2-channel. And so you could have like 24 tracks, 100 tracks, and they're all crammed and mixed into that 2-channel pipe. And then there's an awful lot that's lost in doing that. What we do is we take individual sounds like a kick drum, and we will put it into its own loudspeaker channel, and nothing else is shared with that. And then somewhere else might be the snare drum, and somewhere else is a tom-tom and a tom-tom. And so we build this thing so you're sitting in front of a wall of loudspeakers, and these things, the drums are not mixing in a stereo bus. What they're doing is they're coming from their own speaker, and they mix in the air. And it's just an incredibly different experience. And so that's kind of it. Now, the Grateful Dead did this kind of thing. They were doing it with 8 channels, to where they would do live shows where they had the drums on one and the vocals on another, and guitar player like Jerry Garcia on one, and a bass player on another one, a keyboard player and something else. And it was incredibly effective. They had trouble getting it. It was a lot to set up. What we're proposing is kind of sort of fixed installation things. So the distributed sound mixing in air, that's part number one.
Yep.
Part number two is, I've had experience trying to move sound in space, and what you do is we call it panning, like going from the left over to the right. But it's really limited, and in stereo it's very limited. But what we've done is we've developed a system where we're able to take sound, and I can have like 20 loudspeakers along, you can see this row behind me, and I can make the sound move slowly, going all the way across. And so we're able to move sound, and we can make it move as fast or as slowly as we want. We can make it hop, kind of like a skipping stone, over water, boom, 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 and things like this. And so we've been doing lots of kind of experiments with music and sound effects and things like that. And it's been pretty great. So let me just show real quick with this this is like a prototype we've done. This is what I'm trying to build. This would be something that would have 70 seats. And what's important to know, and I had a theater presenter came in and listened to the demo. And one of the first things he did, he's sitting in the center in my sweet spot, so to speak, and he starts moving to the left and right. And I go, and I knew what he was doing. I go, oh, so what do you do? And he goes, well, I'm just making sure this isn't just one ticket to sell. And that's true, because a lot of these systems, you have to be in this real particular sweet spot to get the imaging. And that's not the case with the sound Mandala, because everything's really coming from each speaker. So let's take a look at this video here. And this is like 192 loudspeakers. You'll see things up on the floor. You can see here where I've got a matrix of loudspeakers. There's about 60 on the front wall. And I can take sounds and move them and make sound move in rectangles or in diagonals. And the audience hears this stuff. We've tested it and proved it. But anyway, so this is going into the space. And you can see we've even got speakers down below where people are sitting. There's also loudspeakers in the floor. And then of course overhead, back behind. And then we come to a rest here.
So Tom, say then this is one example of the kind of manifestation of the technology, or what you might like people to be able to experience from where you are now.
Right.
Where might you imagine this in the real world, and where, taking it outside the lab and wanting people to experience what I experienced or the next level, where might you imagine this technology existing?
Well, for one thing, we believe that we can do sort of like ticketed shows. It would be like one of the things to do, like we've got some really talented composers at the conservatory, very interested in this technology. They see the sound Mandala as a new instrument. They want to write and compose stuff for it. They want their students to do it. And so we would do basically concerts, or in this space, 70 people could come and hear it. And that's part of it. Another thing is there's a lot of interest in galleries and museums in sort of like audio art and things like this. And so we're able to sort of take, basically this is sort of like building a theater set and deconstructing it. And it plays for like 3 months in one city, and then it moves to another city. And we have things that are, some things like kind of sound tricks and interesting things, and other music things, kind of like the demo that you heard. It wasn't all just music, and people love, like we did. Well, I had a student do one with a Pac-Man, where you hear Pac-Man running around the room and then being chased, and then something's gobbled and he runs back the other way. And you're sitting there and you're actually hearing the motion. And so part of this is divesting from the dependence upon the visual. Okay. And so what we found is people coming in, I don't want a video screen in front of them, because then they're looking at that. They're trying to make logic in terms of what they're seeing on a screen. with what they're hearing. We don't black out, but we'll dim the lights down. But and that's part of it. I think another thing would be like taking the actual recording studio master recordings of some famous groups. I could think of a group that would be really cool, like something like Yes, but also some current groups like Portugal the Man, Alt J, are groups that we could mix in the sound mandala and make that stuff sound just kind of incredible. And so then you've got fans and stuff of groups. I could see doing a Pat Metheny show, where you've got this great jazz artist and he's got a wide variety of music and he's really into sounds and ambiances and just great solos and compositions. And you just kind of have one of these very, very deeply connected musical experiences. And the other thing that's important to consider with this, we have a lot of theaters now that are having trouble getting audiences because people are able to sort of stream stuff and do this stuff at home. You're not going to be able to, I mean, you may have the money to put in a 192 channel loudspeaker system, okay? But you're going to have to, you've got the hardware set up, but you're going to have to access the software. What are you going to play? And so it's going to be the esoteric kind of company like ours that's going to be able to create stuff for this and then play it back over a system like this. So we have other plans. Eventually we get to where we drop projection screens, 4 sides and then on the ceiling. And then we're able to have then a real visual immersive experience, which leads to kind of a different kind of filmmaking. But we could also take concert footage and photos and publicity stuff and things of musical groups and create kind of a visual thing that goes along, with a music performance. We don't want everything to be tied back to the visual, but we're not limiting. I mean, we're interested in trying all kinds of things. I mean, and we're deeply still in a research thing. I mean, a lot of the work we've done are experiments, trying things and stuff like that. I mean, just simple things like how much motion and sound can a human being perceive? Okay. I mean, I've got one thing that I mix that every instrument on a 24 track recording is moving, and it's like, and so how much of that is a listener really aware of, And so there's a lot of things that we've learned and there's more to continue to learn.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to describe, in words. You really need to experience it, having been there and understood the feeling of sitting in there and hearing both music and, as you said, voice actors and things. There's many ways to experience it, and that the Celtic music was amazing. So I think just to add imagination to it is fun, and people really just need to experience that and let their imagination run a little bit. But thinking about that, what is most important for you right now to take the next step towards getting this out of the lab or expanding the capacity that you have and kind of realizing your vision? What do you need?
Well, I'm a professor at the university, so the university's involved in this. I mean, the room I'm in now is a university room. The loudspeakers and stuff came from a grant. The computer system I've got actually came from the university, again through a grant to my department, to me, for doing this. What I need is a bigger space, and the campus doesn't seem to have anything that I can use. And it's not something, what I would need is something, for probably about a 3-year period that would be like a research space. It would, probably be about 1,200 square feet as far as a footprint goes, but I need it to be clear span and have probably at least a 22-foot ceiling height. And so that's kind of a tall order as far as a space goes. I mean, ideally, it's kind of like a black box theater, except we use all of our theater spaces on campus, but I can't take one of those. Then you know, what I would need is probably, you know, it's going to be some money. If I'm running right now like around 37 channels. If I were to jump to say like around 100 or so, and the space to build that, it's probably looking at about $40,000 to then do that. To jump to the 192 channels, which would be ideal, it would be more. Then you're talking about what's the cost of each loudspeaker. I mean, the loudspeaker I would like to use, they're probably about $3,000 a piece. And yeah, I know. And I need about 188 of them. And then some subwoofers that are about as expensive. And so, you know, that's kind of not cheap. I don't think we're going to go to that level right away, you know, but we definitely want to get there because it's going to be kind of an incredible experience and it's going to really show it. But for something going around to museums and stuff, it's not going to be those kinds of loudspeakers. It's going to be like the small ones that I've got in here now that are high quality, but they're about $330 a piece. And, you know, if an array that was 80 channels, you know, would blow people away. You know, I've implemented this in live theater. Basically, I created, like, at the Rep in St. Louis, they have the Loretta Hilton Theater. We did this Kansas City Swing Satchel Paige play. We had this great jazz score that I recorded with Bobby Watson, and we took it and I used 5 speakers overhead and five speakers along the foot of the stage. And so I had 10 speakers, 5 vertical pairs, and we mixed this, and it was absolutely unbelievable. But, you know, we weren't doing so much of the motion, but we had the distributed sound. It was much better than when I do 2-channel or 4-channel mixes that I take into the studio. This was like kind of incredible, and the music was just phenomenal. And so, you know, there's large applications, small applications for it. And for something touring, it's not going to be the big stuff, you know, or the big room. But at any rate,
a lot of potential there, and exciting. And any of these iterations, I mean, if there's folks out there interested in sound design, or, you know, the kind of experience that we're talking about in terms of art and museum setup, all these things would be interesting to explore. So definitely encourage them to reach out. Thank you, Tom, for your time. Again, Tom Mardikes, professor and head of graduate sound design at UMKC Theater, speaking today with me, Chris Raycamp, at the UMKC Innovation Center Tech Venture Studio, featuring the Sound Mandala. Thank you again, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Chris. It's good seeing you.
You too.